I think let's get going. So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining me. What's going to be a lively panel discussion as we discuss how video is now vertical. On behalf of Arabnet, in partnership with Snap Inc., I'd like to first welcome our panelists. Terry Mo is the Director of Performance at OMD UAE. Welcome, Terry. Hamad Murdi is the Digital Media Manager, MENA, for Arla Foods, the home of such revered brands as Lurpak and Pook. And Braden Ainswain is the Head of Product Marketing for Snap Inc. for MENA and APAC. So we've got a great lineup, and hopefully going to spend a great hour together with all of you. The shift in consumer media consumption and in turn advertiser spend in MENA has followed the same broad trajectory over the last 2 decades, where everything that was analog became digital, and everything that was digital is becoming mobile. And we first saw that shift from analog to digital as digital channels replaced TV and press as the place that MENA consumers first went for their news and entertainment. And today, according to Ipsos, of the 39.3 billion in USD in media spend in MENA, 3.93 billion, excuse me, 1.26 billion of that is spent on digital, and about 1.8 billion is now spent on TV. And so we've really seen how digital has eclipsed a lot of the more traditional analog channels. But now we see a continuing shift of digital spend to mobile first formats and platforms, and including vertical video. Since the arrival of Snapchat's ephemeral social feeds in 2012, we've seen almost every major digital publisher, Instagram, WhatsApp, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and now even YouTube Shorts joins the trend. The logic is simple. The majority of users access content with their mobile phones, and the majority of that content is accessed in a vertical position. And so according to a study conducted by Snapchat and a national research group in Saudi Arabia, the study shows that nearly all Saudi consumers tune into some form of video on their phones daily, and 87% of consumers are watching more video on their smartphone than a year ago. Premium mobile video, which was once really seen as an extra, now creates these TV-like moments powered by the intimacy of a smartphone, with 90% of consumers saying that full-length TV or video series are too much of a time commitment for their busy lives. 96% of those surveyed say that video fills the screen vertically and feels more personal, and 94% say it feels more immersive. And really outpacing other markets, consumers in Saudi Arabia are now spending 4 hours and 5 minutes on their mobile phones for entertainment, compared to the average 1 hour and 58 minutes spent watching TV per day. And vertical video, it really does create this intimate experience. More than 9 in 10 Generation Z and millennials say that when video fills the screen vertically, 95% say it feels much more personal, and 93% say it feels much more immersive. And so this trend is growing, and we see it everywhere. And even today, we see how major broadcasters like Sky News Arabia are embracing this shift, as they've become the first TV broadcaster in the region to introduce mobile-friendly 24/7 live streaming in that 9:16 format as part of their digital transformation efforts. So there's a lot going on. Clearly, this evolution is underway, and this evolution is not going away. So clearly, a very exciting time to be involved in the space. Mohammed, let's turn to you. As Arla Foods is one of the MENA region's largest and most innovative advertisers, and you've watched that shift that I mentioned from analog to digital to mobile much more closely than a lot of other people have. What's the journey been like for you as an advertiser at Arla Foods?
Well, first of all, thank you, Yusuf. And yeah, at Arla Foods, we've been using video, or we have been focusing on video for the past few years as the main way of communication for our campaigns. And as I said, because people are getting more and more involved or using their mobile phones actually most of the time. So we have a lot of opportunities actually to reach our customers or our consumers on their phone. It's a very personal way of communication. And as you said, the shift actually from analog to digital and the video moving from a linear TV to kind of the pre-rolls on YouTube, for example, where people they can just watch the video and skip whenever they want, to social, where they actually create a lot of content on social. And with the rise of vertical video, and with more people getting more used to create actually content on vertical video, that's an opportunity for us as advertisers to communicate through this format. And we've been trying a lot recently. We're trying to use this vertical real estate not only as videos, but also as like AR experiences and game lenses as well, to engage more with the consumers, because users nowadays actually can skip the videos, and again, because users are creating a lot of content in the stories format and in the snaps format, it's very spontaneous and very non-polished, not like ads. So ads can easily be spotted as ads. So people can know from the first second that this is an ad, and they can easily skip. And it's back to us again as advertisers to have this piece of content and have this video as relevant as possible to the user and as interesting as possible to the users, to catch their attention and make the user actually watch the ad and have our message.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because if you think about the evolution we talked about, one of the really interesting things about the evolution is the fact that really people don't have to watch your stuff anymore. You know, the fact that we had to sit and watch TV and get through the ads to get to the next segment of a TV show has been completely blown up, first by skippable ads, but now even the fact that it just through so much more quickly. You know, people always said that advertising, you know, can't feel like the uninvited guest that shows up to the party. And so, you know, I guess the question is really for everyone, is that how, I mean, I guess advertisers have had to work a lot harder to make their content feel much more honest, much more refreshing. It needs to kind of integrate seamlessly into your feed, isn't it? Because if I'm watching a feed of my friends, my family, things that I'm really interested in, and you know, the need for advertising to really feel like it's part of that conversation, to feel a lot more intimate and personal. And have you had to adapt your creative strategy to feel a lot less intrusive and feel more creative and maybe a bit more entertaining as well?
Yeah, we've been trying to do this for recently, and not only to think of vertical video as just resizing of the normal video that we have, or the resizing of the TVC that we have, but we're trying to make it native to the platform, make it more interesting, and actually have this in mind when we're shooting our ads as well. So we're shooting with vertical in mind, because most of the time, if you're shooting with the horizontal, sometimes it doesn't fit. It doesn't fit to the vertical real estate. Yeah. Should have actually vertical in mind while we're shooting. Also, there's as you said, because people can skip from the beginning. So at least for the impression that we have on social, at least it should communicate the brand from the beginning. So at least we're not losing on this impression. So if a user is choosing to skip and not continue watching the video, at least we can have our brand.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I think you know, video has been increasing over time, and I think it's becoming even more complex. And I mean, Terry, you advise a range of clients on how they can get the most value from most value from their media investments. And how have you seen vertical video impact on client strategies? And are all video views equal in your eyes?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. I would say definitely, short answer, absolutely not. All video views are not equal, but our area of focus is needing a bit of refinement, I think, in a lot of cases, right? Because we talk about vertical video, we talk about you know, TVCs and how TVCs get adapted. And Mohammed had raised a really good point there about the fit for the format and the channel, and making sure that the video that we're releasing as an ad doesn't feel like an ad, it feels native to that particular platform. And I think that's one of those really big keys there, is we need to make sure that we are capturing users' attention, that we're not just placing something in front of them that can be, or everything should be skippable to some extent. The user should have that choice of what they want to consume. But it's our job as advertisers to create content that's powerful enough, that's engaging enough, that that user won't want to won't want to skip it and will want to absorb whatever we're putting in front of them. And if they don't, then it's a question of either the creative isn't the right fit, or B, the audience isn't the right fit for that message that you're trying to tell. And I think it's really important that we make sure when we approach video that we understand what's the story that we're telling, who are we trying to tell it to, and how do we put it in front of them in a way that's as big, as bold, and as engaging as possible.
Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because I guess you need to adapt both the kind of the channels and the formats that you're using, but also the creative. And Mohammed, I'm curious to hear your thoughts around this, and maybe Braden as well. I mean, Mohammed, I imagine with Lurpak, you might have a video strategy, or perhaps you have, videos that, recipe videos, for example, how-tos that aren't by their nature skippable. They're things that people want to be able to sit with, to download, to save to a favorite, but then maybe you find ways to provide really tasty bits of inspiration on the vertical channels that are a bit more ephemeral and a bit faster. So how do you adapt creative strategy to match that adaptation of the video strategy as well?
Well, it depends on the campaign objective, of course, whether it's an awareness campaign where we can focus only on the product and the USPs of the product, or engagement campaign where we can serve recipes and more longer formats. And even with the longer formats, we're still using the vertical video to drive traffic to the longer format. Yeah. So it's in a kind of, or in maybe a teaser for a recipe, for example, or only focusing on one USP of the product, and then the user can opt in for more longer formats, maybe on YouTube, for example, or on our website. But this teaser actually can be served on vertical, and it's serving the purpose of the campaign.
Yeah, Braden, I want to turn to you and ask you about brand safety. I think this is a topic that's been coming up quite a bit. And I think, as with all publishers who are dependent on user-generated content, there naturally comes that question of brand safety. Do you see it as a challenge or an opportunity, and how do you kind of work with advertisers who might be concerned about what their brand kind of sits before or after?
Yeah, I think brand safety continues to be a hot and very, very important topic. I mean, it's been like this for a very long time, but I would say probably for the past like 3 years, it's become a topic where a lot of advertisers, brands are paying a lot of attention to. It's very important. There is third parties that help us validate the quality of impressions and the safety of the inventory that different platforms have, and Snapchat is not an exception. So there are tech companies, for example, like Moat, that can help you understand how the impressions are being served, and then under what type of content actually the brand impressions are actually showing up. Now, from speaking specifically of Snapchat, it's not necessarily a big problem for us, especially when we're talking about one of the sections of the app itself called Discover. So in this specific section, what we'll have is full control over the editorial of videos that actually get published on this section of the app on Discover. So then there is actually zero risk of any brand actually appearing against any type of bad content, adult content, violence, or anything like this, simply because we manually actually vet everything that goes on the platform. So from a brand safety perspective, industry-wise, there is, I think, a lot of work that we need to continue to do, and I believe that everybody's actually working to have very safe, very brand safe environments where advertisers can feel comfortable and invest their media dollars or media dirhams. But on Snapchat specifically, we built a platform so that it is very safe for any advertiser. So even when things for the past year have gotten a little bit tense about impressions appearing in the wrong places on some other platforms, some advertisers that are very careful about where their impressions actually appear, and they may have pulled out on other platforms, they've actually continued to spend on Snapchat because of the high brand safety environment that we have. So there's not much. There's not much. And then also something that's very important is that that some advertisers also don't want to be around UGC content potentially, and then there are also ways on the platform that somebody can a brand can actually avoid running on UGC shall they want to do so. But yeah, we take brand safety. I mean, we build products with brand safety in mind, and it is a very hot topic, I think, for most brands, and especially CPG. I feel like these are the brands that are definitely the most sensitive because they end up targeting such large amounts of people, and families many times are actually at core of that.
Yeah, it's almost unavoidable though, isn't it? I mean, really, by its nature, UGC is quite open and unrestricted. You think about all the most popular channels nowadays are almost entirely UGC driven channels. So clearly, there has to be that trade-off, and it's interesting to hear kind of how that's being done. What we're going to do now is flash up a poll question for our audience, and please do feel free to kind of put in what you guys think about it. I'm not sure how that's going to work, but I imagine a poll will magically appear on the screen. And the question is, do you think the usage of vertical video will increase in the coming year? Do you think we're going to see more of it, about the same, or less vertical video? So just make your bet, as I have, and then close it, and then we'll come back to that question in a minute to get more thoughts around that. I also want to talk a little bit about commerce. I mean, I live in London, and I think for us, what we've seen through the coronavirus pandemic is there's been a real acceleration of e-commerce adoption, even when it comes to CPG and kind of, more traditional consumer goods, people shopping online, doing all their grocery shopping online, stuff being delivered to their homes. I appreciate that perhaps MENA hasn't quite caught up with that, but I imagine we are going to see that adoption of e-commerce, especially being accelerated by COVID. And so, I want to talk a bit about that. And Terry, maybe you want to get your thoughts first. So like I said, while MENA might lag behind other regions in the adoption of e-commerce as a primary sales channel, how do you tie results back to consumer product purchase? And how do you kind of help draw that line between that media dollar that's spent and people actually then going and buying their product, perhaps only on analog channels for the moment? And, maybe from a brand uplift perspective, but then also from a commerce tracking perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I like to think of it scale, right? On one side, you've got the really basic things to do, right? And that's looking at how people are interacting with a particular ad unit, looking for proxy metrics. And I think that's really important, is that we're not just measuring to an impression or a view or something like that, but really understanding, is this an ad which we want people to consume 50, 75% of? Is it something we want them to watch a minimum of 20 seconds before we count this as successful? Find that proxy metric that works really well in platform, and you can start optimizing a particular ad's performance through. And that's something which we should ideally have connected to business performance at the end of the day, right? And on the other end of the scale, we can take something like media mix modeling, which is taking a look at your sales data over a given extended period. I would say, year, 2 years, understanding what media channels are in play for yourself over that period at any given point in time, understanding what your competitors are in play with, understanding the seasonal factors, working all of that in to build an algorithm which then predicts sales, and then understanding, okay, out of the past 2 years, 27% of our sales were driven by media, and of that, it might be 34% was driven by our use of vertical video. And we know that because when we move from vertical to a more traditional format, our sales were not in line with what we would have otherwise expected them to be. So that's one way that we can look at media mix modeling. There's also a couple of platforms around the place are now starting to look at more in-depth ways of understanding commerce, but they have really strict requirements in terms of how you're set up in store. So, you know, if you have a digital receipting system in place, then that's absolutely magic, because if you're a retailer with a digital receipting system, then we can understand by, you know, the user's email address, match that back to users that have been exposed to advertising and directly attribute it that way. But that requires a really specific set of technology that's not always under the marketer's control. So for most people, I'd say that range from proxymetrics to media mix modeling.
That's really helpful, thank you. And Mohammed's perspective on this as well.
Yeah, sure. Adding to what Terry was saying, aside from the media mix modeling as well, it's a bit tricky for a CPG to accurately attribute the sale to the online activities or digital activities. We do kind of correlation, but not an actual attribution. But what we're trying here in Arla Foods is kind of an omni-channel strategy where we communicate across different touch points to the user. And we're trying to link all of our activities to our website, where we can actually, this is our data hub, where we can collect all the signals from different touch points, whether it's search, social, display, and make it easier for the user actually to shop one full recipe. So with only a click, with only one click, a user can add the whole basket on one of the e-commerce platforms that we work with. And later in this project, actually, we'll give the user the freedom to choose which e-commerce platform he can shop with. So at least we know what is the effect of our online activities or our online campaigns on the sales. And having the same maybe recipe and having the same promotions maybe in store, we can link as well the sales of this specific product to the online activities as well.
Yeah, to build on the guys, another way that I've seen some companies actually try to measure offline sales, it's just A/B testing against different sets of stores, different cities, different markets. Shall all other variables be the same? So for example, you could do targeting, since we're in the UAE, it's like I could target Dubai Marina and JLT, for instance, like very heavily. And then I exclude the rest of the other places, other supermarkets. And then if I see a lift in sales from these specific supermarkets, let's say in Dubai Marina, that I was targeting versus, I don't know, downtown or Jumeirah 1, then I could probably say that there may be some type of correlation between the digital activity that I was running and then offline sales, or in this case, like supermarket sales. So that's another way I know that some brands are actually performing and try to connect the dots between digital and offline. In the case of CPGs, it's difficult because you could even take like offline data, like your email, your phone number of the user or purchasers that you know have actually bought your products, and then upload it into the ad platform, let's say Snapchat in this case, and then you can see who has been exposed and not exposed, and you can see what type of sales lift you actually got. But the challenge with CPGs, many times a lot of that data is not necessarily owned by the brands. It mainly sits with the supermarkets, with the likes of Carrefour, Lulu, etc. So that becomes a little bit tricky. However, there are some CPG companies that have directly delved into D2C, and they are selling things on their own. So I will say one example of an advertiser in Saudi. They're called Birain. It's a water. It's an advertiser. It's a brand that sells water. And they've decided to not only continue to distribute to supermarkets, but they decided actually to create their own app. They have their own website and they sell directly. And because water, it makes sense because water is something constant that somebody would be buying. So it made sense for them to actually like invest in this type of like B2C distribution. And they are doing incredibly well. And they were seeing that we're selling through their app. Where we're getting people to actually download the app, and it's proven very successful, and they're actually become quite advanced. So thinking of a CPG company that is that's become like a hardcore like e-com advertiser, it's for me it's actually quite exciting. And even other brands as well. For example, like Nestle Dolce Gusto, for instance, they've used us before to actually sell their coffee machines directly through their website as well, being a CPG company also. So there's ways to try to measure. There's definitely no silver bullet that will allow you to correlate 100% that impression, digital impression, to that offline sales. There's ways and proxies around it, like all of us have alluded to. And then from an e-com perspective and more D2C, there are some CPG brands that are finding a lot of success in general in digital, and also Snap on promoting their products and closing out those sales, which is exciting. We're seeing the evolution of, for me at least, of CPG to becoming like hardcore marketeers, like on performance marketing, which is also quite exciting.
Yeah, I think the commerce piece is really exciting, and I think once you can kind of connect those dots, I think CPGs have historically been such hardcore marketers. You know, I think there's been such a great focus, especially in store, in terms of how do you really drive those sales. And I think the more we can do over time to try to link that cause and effect, I think it's going to create even more opportunity for investment, for creativity. As soon as you can kind of link this dollar to that dollar, I think it's going to be incredibly powerful. I think we've closed our poll now, so maybe we can share the results of our poll with the audience before we move on to our next topic of discussion. And it should magically appear. So not surprisingly, 90% of you think that the usage of vertical video will increase in the coming year. Clearly, everybody shares kind of that optimistic view, which is great. And I think we're all excited about the success of this thing and kind of where it goes. And it's clear that there's a lot of opportunity. But I want to talk a bit about those keys to success. I mean, Braden, you've been in the region, you've been in the industry for a while now. You've worked on the agency side, and you've now working as on the publisher side. What do you usually see as the keys to success for a video-focused media plan and campaign?
I think when you're talking about the best way to plan video in general is to go back. I think one of the guys mentioned that earlier, is going back to the objectives that you want to achieve. The good thing, since we're on the topic of vertical video, is that vertical video will help you achieve all of this. So the stories format, which put kind of vertical video on the map, started in 2013. Now, wanted to give that for context, that's like about 7 years ago. Okan Gunai on the comments section on the chat mentioned that L'Oreal it's doing great work when it comes to digital vertical video, and he's talking about how long it's taken the industry to move towards like mobile video. So since we started the stories format in 2013 as vertical video, it has taken a while for sure for brands to embrace that a little bit more. So now they're understanding it, and now we're seeing that they are producing. Many of them are actually producing assets with vertical video in mind. Horizontal and vertical video, there's value to both. Now, from a planning perspective, I would say, regardless of vertical video, horizontal video is very important for your media plans, because it's the format that people prefer. People prefer watching a video over an image. People prefer to have sound versus an image that has no sound, which totally makes sense. Now, what you should look at, what are all the different channels where you can actually distribute your video assets? What are the channels that deliver the best video experience? And then from there, select what are the types of formats that you want to run through those different vehicles or channels. So shall it be TV? Shall it be Snap? Shall it be Instagram? Shall it be TikTok, YouTube, whatever it may be? Based on my agency experience, I would say that the advertisers who normally qualify a video, a good video impression, something that's a little bit more like TV. So for instance, like YouTube would always be on the media plans because it was a little bit more like TV. And now what we're seeing as well is that that they're taking vertical video also on Snap as one of those channels that they choose to distribute video because it's full screen, sound on, etc. It reflects a little bit like TV as well. So they're using that to build these like video media plans versus like newsfeed type of environments where you're swiping up. So I would say if you're looking for reach, definitely go for the platforms that are delivering that reach, but are also delivering high quality video impressions. And then yeah, if you're looking anything lower in the funnel than that, test everything. And when it comes to vertical video, definitely give it a shot because it's taken a while for the market to be able to make video work for direct response or create engagement or drive traffic or drive sales, whatever it may be, but we're already there. And vertical video is not an exception to that. So even like the example I was given earlier about this company, water company in Saudi, Bahrain, being able to drive app installs and sales, purchases through the app, etc. That's all being done with vertical video. Or Nestlé Dolce Gusto, e-com wise, that's working with vertical video. And then if we're looking at Arla and the different brands that leverage Snapchat, it's the guys are using it across the board for all different types of objectives, and all of that is being done in addition to AR, which we do really well at Snap. They're also leveraging vertical video as well. So yeah, I would say that first assess what your objectives are, like the guys mentioned before, and then test it out, and don't underestimate, I would say, the reach of vertical video across any platform, and especially when it comes to Snap. One interesting stat actually that we worked on earlier in the year was we were looking at what was the reach of our Discover platform within Snapchat versus TV. And then to our surprise, actually we were able to reach about 10 million people, almost 10 million people in Saudi on a daily basis through Discover. So that's all vertical video, which is larger than any TV channel that you may want to plan against. So don't underestimate
people like that.
Yeah, and that goes back to the topic that you guys were talking about earlier about just the evolution of video in general. And it's simply people are just consuming a lot more media on mobile. So there's more opportunities to actually interact with consumers on a mobile device. And then also, if we think about our generation and even younger generations, they want snappy, quick content, quote unquote snackable content. And through the NRG study that you were alluding to earlier, Yusuf, as part of the survey, they asked users, it's like, what do they prefer? Do they prefer like longer form content where they, will sit and then watch a series or watch an hour of long form content, regardless of where that may be, TV or on their mobile? Or do they prefer actually like short form content and watch multiple pieces of it, different things? And they prefer multiple, they prefer variety, right? So that's why I would say mobile video in general and vertical video on Snap, it ends up yielding actually a lot of consumption. So a lot of opportunities for brands to actually connect with consumers.
I think that's a really interesting. Oh, sorry. I'll be really quick. I was just going to say, I think that last point that you raised, Braden, is really, really interesting and really key, because that short snackable content is also content that's much more prone to interruption. People are going to be a little bit more comfortable with that jumping back and forth, even if it's jumping to a separate piece of content. It's much easier to interrupt than a half-hour long video on YouTube or that TV kind of environment. So I think that's definitely part of it, and the other part of it is also that shift that you mentioned to even, you know, hardcore direct response advertisers finding a place on video, that's also driven by formats and platforms that are enabling that, where, you know, a YouTube video, for instance, is really hard to interrupt or to deal with an interruption, you know, but you get, let's say, you know, obviously Snapchat was breaking in the room. With Snapchat's preload, that's huge. People can get used to the idea of skipping to a site. It loads really quick, or it's already loaded. I can browse around. I can go back to what I was doing. Another example, I think, is TikTok comes up because they've got these really nice big calls to action. You know, if you're looking for a direct response, then having, you know, almost, I think it's about an eighth of the screen, a fifth of the screen at the bottom, that's a call to action. That's really, really different to having, you know, Instagram stories style video with just, you know, that one word call to action at the very bottom of the screen. So the platform and the formats make a really big difference to what vertical video is now able to do that it wasn't able to do, you know, 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And yeah, adding to that, one of the main key factors to the success of a video campaign is, again, being native to each platform and how users are consuming content on this platform. YouTube, for example, people are in the mindset of watching longer formats. They go to the YouTube to watch an episode, maybe up to 45, 1 hour minutes. So it's they are in this mindset. Facebook with the scrolling maybe on in the in-feed ad, they're not in the same mindset. People go to Snapchat, for example, to use lenses and AR experiences. Maybe that's the first thing. Actually, the app off and on is the camera. So people are in the mindset again to use this, and that's how we've been using Snapchat for our campaigns. We've tried few times having an AR experience, and again using this vertical real estate not only for videos but to engage more with the consumers. We had a campaign with the Puck, and we had another campaign actually still live with Durpack, where people actually can play a game on Snapchat. And with playing a game, we can still communicate the message that we want to communicate to the consumers, and complementing that with videos, of course. Whether people are seeing the Snap ads, we can retarget those people who have engaged with us before with a video to increase, you know, the top of mind awareness as well. So we're using all the platform, or all the touch points on the same platform.
I think it's really interesting. It's funny, isn't it, in a way? I remember, like, in the old days of advertising, how you would kind of show the ad, and then in the end you would kind of reveal the brand and be like, "Da-da!" Like, this is the brand. And it's interesting. I'd love to get your thoughts, Mohammed, maybe some others, in terms of your clients. Like, you're almost flipping that on top of its head now. Like, if you don't show the logo in the first 3 seconds, you've almost missed that opportunity sometimes, haven't you?
Yeah, that's correct. And back to the point that people can skip the ad quickly, and they can opt out whenever they want. So your ad needs to be as interesting as the content that they are consuming. And with this brand, in the first 3 or 4 seconds, you can actually at least correlate, or at least have this the brand in the mind of the consumer, and not only showing the logo will do the work, but actually the product itself, or maybe the brand itself in the picture.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Thank you.
I think there's something super interesting about that. So it's I think, in all honesty, I think it was YouTube that started kind of the skippable, you know, type of format, right? So and it was, they saw it was probably out of respect to the user, and I'm sure they did tons of studies that, you know, just forcing a 30-second spot on a on a user when they want to watch their content as a pre-roll, like, would drive people mad, which then off of that, many different ad tech companies have actually built on it. And the same thing has actually happened with Snap. where, to you guys' point, a lot of the video that actually runs, it's skippable. So you have to like build with that in mind. So it's not only building vertical, but it's also building with, okay, I want to make it entertaining. I want to make it fun. I want to make it quickly informative as well, because you don't have that much time to communicate your message. Now, there is also, while you build with respect for the consumer, there's also ways YouTube has unskippable formats as well, which cost a little bit more because of the unskippable experience itself. From our perspective on Snap, we also have unskippable formats. Pretty much probably everybody like bumper ad on YouTube, a similar format, which is commercials. So 6 seconds is very important. It's only seconds that's actually unskippable. And to give you guys a little bit of background on this as well, we only place these 6 second unskippable spots in shows. Shows are the more quote unquote more long form content on mobile that we have on Snap. It's about 3 to 5 minute shows that you'll have, episodic type of content. And we did that on purpose because we wanted, if somebody's watching their friend's story, if somebody's watching an influencer story or something along those lines, they're flipping through the content quite fast, right? They're just skipping, watching 30 seconds, skipping. So leaving ad formats that are skippable makes sense, again, for the respect of the consumer. However, when you're talking about a 3 to 5 minute episode that they could be watching, one of the shows that we have on Discover, then we could afford to actually have just a 6 second spot max unskippable in that type of content, because they're okay with it. The consumer will think it's like, yeah, you know what? I'll watch 6 seconds, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And it's okay because I'm getting value. I'm getting entertainment out of it. And then the other aspect as well, when it comes to like respect for the consumer, is that we never place it as a pre-roll, right? It's like, no, get your content. You came for this. It's like, we'll place it as a mid-roll. Which is also a little bit more acceptable. So there's these things also where the industry is going, where we are respecting the consumer as much as possible, while also trying to deliver to brands, because the brands also value highly unskippable content. So we have to play around with both while being respectful for the end user, for the Snapchatter, for the person using YouTube, whatever it may be.
Yeah, it's really interesting how, the formats are adapting, but also the measurements of, the formats are adapting, so the creative product is adapting, but very importantly, the measurement of performance is also adapting as well, and even from a mindset perspective. And I think this leads on, there's a good question here from Okan, and he says, vertical videos can be passed quickly due to their format. Video completion rates are lower than horizontal videos. For this reason, their performances are interpreted maybe as low. They support the customer journey. So if we interpret the success of horizontal and vertical video as separate metrics, what would they be? Terry, maybe you kind of measure the performance of campaigns. Maybe we can start with you. How do you measure success, completion rates? How are you adapting to these changing metrics all the time? And what do you talk to your clients about in terms of measuring value?
So I think it's a really interesting point, and I think the biggest difference for me between vertical and horizontal video is those horizontal formats tend to be dominated by the big player, the lean back kind of players like YouTube, and the view rate of those ads is also tainted a little bit. If you're not careful with your targeting, if you're not careful with what you're doing, they can be a little bit tainted by a parent handing an iPad to their kid with Peppa Pig playing or something like that. Or it could just be, I watch YouTube a lot on my TV, and sometimes my remote is just that little bit out of reach. Time it takes me to walk to the kitchen where I left my remote, I could just sit and watch the whole commercial. That's a really different experience to when you've got your mobile in your hand, which invariably, if you're watching vertical, it is on that smaller screen. It is in your hand, because if it was, 2 meters away from me, 3 meters away from me, like my TV was, I wouldn't be able to see anything. So the nature of the mobile, the nature of vertical is it's there and you're ready to skip. So we are seeing larger rates of these videos being skipped, but it's not the nature of the video so much as it is the nature of the platform. Measurement's part of it. Measurement of something like a video view, but not to, not to that MRC standard 2-second or 3-second. I would go for, your 10-second, your 15-second, however long it takes for you to reasonably get your message across. That's what you should be looking for. And if a horizontal format can get your message across in that time, and people aren't skipping in that time, that's fantastic. But you also have to really, really analyze what that format is. And is it the person that you're looking for that's seeing that message? There has to be a bit of flex, because sometimes that completed view is not really a true completed view. It's just someone who's turned on YouTube for a bit of noise, a bit of ASMR. And there are tech partners out there that do specialize in rooting out this sort of thing and making sure that you do avoid placements on these sorts of channels. And it's something that I think is well worth investing in, to make sure that a view is a view, because they're definitely not all created equal.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds incredibly complex. I mean, how do you optimize for that? How do you kind of optimize it even mid-campaign? How do you kind of constantly juggle all these competing metrics and priorities?
Look, cost is a big part of it for us. Once we've taken out all of those other factors, we're sure that a particular video is being placed, we're getting good quality views, we're getting the audience that we want. It's not sitting in the hands of a toddler. Then we look at not a cost per view. I've established that's probably not the best metric, but for each particular channel where we do have video, we establish that, all right, this particular channel, the best that they can do is 15 seconds. It does take us 15 to get our message across. So let's make sure that we are managing 15. And if a particular channel is not capable of measuring beyond 2 or 3 seconds, then we look at either a proxy, we'll only look at a certain percentage of these, or we start to really question a particular channel's role on a media plan. If we can't justify the impact that channel has, we have to ask those difficult questions of, does this channel belong, or does this supplier belong? Yeah. If they can't give us that safety and that sense of peace that we're looking for.
Well, I think it's really, I think it'll only become more complex over time. I mean, I want to shift away from metrics and talk a little bit about inspiration. Clearly this is a format and this is a medium with a lot of opportunity for creativity, especially when you talk about our audience. So you're talking about young consumers. They have a voracious appetite for online and mobile media. There's clearly a lot of space for innovation and creativity. And I'm just kind of curious to hear from all of you, like, who's doing it well? I mean, Braden, you must have some great clients who are doing some really interesting, innovative things in this space. And Mohammed, I'm sure Arla's jumped in with both feet to adapt to the medium. Who's doing it well? Like, who can we inspire our audience with today in terms of great stories or great examples?
From my perspective, I think many advertisers are actually doing a great job. I think it goes back to what Mohammed was talking about earlier about being native on the platform. And the advertisers that are doing it the best is the advertisers that understand how consumers want to consume media, and they adapt to the consumers, versus expecting the consumers adapting to how the brand wants to communicate their message, right? Like a brand may say, oh, I need to do a 15-second spot. Well, you know what? That's not necessarily what consumers want, unless you have a celebrity, or Messi or somebody, that will attract the attention right away. So the brands that are doing it best are the brands that understand consumer trends and understand the platforms very well, and they adapt to the consumers versus expecting for the consumers to adapt to them. So Arla is a very good example. Yeah, tell me.
I mean, it just really feels to me like the mobile phone is such an intimate space. you know? And so it just feels like naturally the advertising, the creative needs to feel so much more intimate. I understand if you're watching TV, it can feel a bit more distant and a bit more monolithic, but even back to what Terry was saying about, you know, how the distance of the phone from you, you know, kind of lends itself to being skippable, whatever. But I think just the fact that this is so close and so intimate, and the content you're watching around you is your family, it's your friends, it's the people and the things that you genuinely care about. You need advertising to feel just as intimate and just as personal, don't you?
Yeah, you got it. It's about the attention, and Terry was like mentioning that like very well earlier. Like when I'm watching, like sometimes I'm watching TV, it's like it's a little sometimes like noise in the background, especially now working from home. Sometimes I just like to have it on the back, and then ads may be playing and I'm not really paying attention, right?
Yeah.
Or I may have music and then I'm not really paying attention. The ad just runs, it's like whatever. But when you're on your phone, like your eyes are right there, you're looking at it. So hence also why probably likely seeing a little bit more people like skip through the content, or the views actually not lasting as long. So I think that's very important. So for instance, what I've seen, for example, with the guys from Arla, is that they understand that, for instance, when you're like shooting vertical video, and when you're shooting mobile, it's that the packs themselves should be a little bit bigger because the screen is smaller, right? The pack should be bigger, the brand should be a little bit bigger, so it's actually noticeable right away. So that helps. So they're doing extremely well. Brands like, for example, like KitKat, also are very entertaining. So they understand that most people are on the mobile devices to find some type of entertainment. So they know how to communicate that in a very quick, like snappy way. So you will not see them run 30-second spots. They are, the shorter the better, because they want to make sure that their messaging is done in the right way. And also, when they shoot, they of course they have, let's say, 10 different things that they want to communicate for KitKat specifically, but they understand they cannot communicate 10 things when you're talking about a commercial, let's say a 6-second spot, right? They know that they need to mention 1 or 2 things only. So these are things that when they're building video and vertical video specifically, they're always keeping those things in mind, which ends up driving, however they measure it in different ways. But if you're talking about brand lift studies, it measures good results. Then you have other brands, for example, like during Ramadan, like Vimto also, they do it extremely well. So and they in something that I forgot who mentioned it earlier, is that when it comes to like formats on mobile, because it's so personal, the brand doesn't have to be that polished up either. It doesn't have to be a full crazy production, right? It could be an ad that somebody films in their house, and it's funny, it's entertaining, and gets the message across. So it makes it even, I feel like vertical video, it makes it even farther accessible, because the consumer is not expecting something over the top when it comes to advertising. They're just looking for smart entertainment, right? It's not a Super Bowl ad. That's not what they expect. They expect just something quick, short, entertaining, and something that's going to be memorable.
I might add to that with you brought up a really interesting point there, Braden, and this is more a comment and a request than anything. If you're one of those advertisers with 10 things that you want to highlight, 10 product features that you want to highlight about a particular product, film all 10, let your agency put together a testing plan, see which one of those really responds. Don't pick it on the spot. Just let's get all of those messages out there, and we can use performance as a testing ground to see what people really want to see about your brand.
Yeah, no, clearly there's a lot of opportunity there. I mean, I think this has been really, really helpful. I think there's one question I wanted to share. Again, you guys can help me. Question comes from Jamil, and he says, in automotive, it's quite expensive to produce content, and it's usually produced for TVCs. We always produce the content with vertical in mind, but are there faster, cheaper, and easier ways to produce vertical videos?
From our perspective, we have a tool, it's called Snap Publisher. where you can take any type of video, it may be horizontal, it may be square, whatever aspect ratio that you may have, and it will help you actually change the creative from other non-vertical formats to vertical formats. So that's something that we have. And then also we work with different creative partners as well that help with this type of like reformatting to like full production of vertical video. So I mean, if anybody needs any resources or tips or guidance on this, I'm happy to help out. And then the agencies as well, Terry would know this too, like they're very good at producing all these types of different assets, and then vertical as well. So yeah.
Great, thanks for sharing that feedback. Guys, I'm mindful of time, and so really just kind of want to wrap up and really just talk about the future. You know, I mean, looking forward, think about the next kind of 12 months. If we had this panel again next October, and the Corona's gone and the world has changed and all the other great things that are going to happen between now and then, you know, what are we going to be talking about? What are you most excited about in the next 12 months in the vertical video space? Braden, maybe we can start with you.
What I'm the most excited about is it's customization. Two things: customization of creative on video, so dynamic creative when it comes to video. I feel like that will be a very big trend. So something like Mohammed was talking about, recipes and shoppable recipes. So being able to kind of connect that in a seamless way with vertical video. So I feel like having the technology to do so in a scalable way will continue to develop and will enable it for CPG advertisers, similar to other like e-com advertisers that we're enabling it to. And then what I'm very excited about as well is just seeing the consumption of premium content increase even farther actually than other years. From our perspective, we've seen 50% growth year over year from 2019 to 2020 when it comes to premium vertical video consumption on Snap. So then we're seeing that it's becoming exponential. So I'm very excited about seeing that grow, and also seeing like the type of additional new partners, content partners, you know, like NBC, D1, etc., that will come on board. So that's very exciting.
Wonderful. Mohammed, what are you most excited about?
I guess the user-generated content will continue rising, and with the more platforms adopting the vertical format as well, we're seeing YouTube adopting it. We're seeing LinkedIn as well with the stories. Maybe it's not monetized yet, but I believe it will soon as the consumption of those formats increase. And again, with the rise of TikTok now, and everyone can produce content, I believe that the advertisers as well will tend to have more of again non-polished format of videos, just to be more closer to the consumers and what they're used to see.
Great, thank you. Terry, what's got you excited?
Oh, there's so many things buzzing around in my head right now. A couple of, I think Mohammed's completely right about some of the slower platforms to adopt vertical video. I think there's some change there that's happening. Dynamic is something I'm really looking forward to. It has been, and it kind of still is, a little bit cost prohibitive, but I think dynamic video is something that some smart cookie out there is going to crack at some point. How do we make a personalizable and really engaging video format on the fly? How do we stitch that together on the fly rather than in an email or something like that? I think that's going to be huge. That's probably not in the next year, but it will be a big change. Otherwise, I think shoppable formats would be something that I'm really keen to see. We talked about vertical being that lean forward, engaged, which naturally e-com's shoppable.
That's great. And I think, from my point of view, I think there's just so much opportunity right now. And it feels like we're still very much at the beginning of this. And I think as advertisers move towards it, the platforms are coming up with new innovations, new interesting ways. And it just feels like there's a really interesting kind of dynamic building right now around this. It's intimate, it's personal, it's customizable, it's quick, it's creative. And I think a year from now, I think we're going to be really amazed by just how much further we can push this. Well, look, guys, this has been great. I mean, it's been really, really good talking to all of you. And it's been really interesting to kind of get the point of view, from an advertiser, from an agency, and from a publisher to all talk about what really is a very exciting format. So same time next year, boys?
Yeah. Sounds good.
Great. Well, look, again, a big thanks to Arabnet for convening us and bringing us together. A big thank you to our partners, Snap Inc., for supporting this broadcast. For anybody else who wants to kind of follow up with our panelists, they're all on LinkedIn. They're easy to find. I'm easy to find as well. So really nothing more to say, but really just kind of thank the audience. Thank you for those of you who've kind of stayed with us till the end. And really thank you to the panelists. So bravo. Thank you, everyone. And have a lovely day.
You too. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Take care.